At AARP Missouri, we want to support you as you age. But first, you should learn a little more about us. AARP is a nonprofit organization working to help adults 50 plus in Missouri live their lives to the fullest. We advocate for over 700,000 members on important issues such as strengthening Social Security, protecting access to health care, and ensuring everyone has independence and choice as they age. AARP Missouri also offers online tools, resources, and programs you can access right from the comfort of your home. Learn how to protect yourself from fraud and scams with the AARP Fraud Watch Network. Become an active part of AARP Missouri as a virtual volunteer. Find support while caring for a loved one through our caregiving resources. And enjoy a variety of fun virtual events that improve your health and wellness, like our exercise series, Moving It. At AARP Missouri, there's an entire community waiting for you. Learn more about us at aarp.org/mo.
Hello, I'm Diane Hall from AARP Missouri. Did you know that it is National Caregiver Month? Today, we're going to be talking with AARP's National Family and Caregiving expert, Amy Goyer. Thank you for joining us, Amy.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
Now, one of the reasons that we're really happy to have you with us today is because AARP really wants to connect caregivers to the resources and services that they need, whether it's how to find time for yourself as a caregiver, local and national resources for caregivers, or just a way to check in with other caregivers for tips and support. And this is where Amy comes in. She not only knows firsthand what it means to be a caregiver, but she's plugged into all kinds of resources and support for caregivers. So today we're going to learn about the financial side of caregiving, including some legislation that can help caregivers. But as we get started, Amy, can you tell us a little bit more about your caregiving journey?
Sure, yeah. So I have been a caregiver basically my entire adult life. From the time I was about 20 years old when I was in college, and my parents moved from Ohio to Arizona, and my grandparents were in Indiana. And I began helping with them. My grandmother had Alzheimer's, and my granddaddy was 10 years older than she, but he was her primary caregiver. And I eventually got more involved in getting them home-based services, Meals on Wheels, home health care, keeping them in their home as long as possible. And then flash forward, my mom had a stroke when she was only 63. And I helped get her into a good rehab program and traveled to Arizona, repeatedly to help support my parents over the years. Then, we all have episodic things, like my dad had a hip replacement. So I came and telecommuted for a month to help take care of things while he recovered. And later on, my dad developed Alzheimer's disease, and it was really a devastating thing, because we knew his mother had Alzheimer's, and whenever you have it in the family, you worry about that. My dad was amazing. I ended up quitting my full-time job and moving out to Arizona to help take care of my parents. And my amazing parents moved into a senior community for 3 years. I moved into their house 2 miles away. And then they moved back in the house with me and lived with me. My mom passed away a year later. My dad passed away about 6 years later. So he lived with me to the end, right up until he was 94 years old, and passed away at home with my sisters and I surrounding him. In the middle of that, I was also caregiving for my oldest sister, who had Cushing disease. She lived in Maryland, so I was her long distance caregiver, and she passed away a year after my mom did. So I managed all of their estates. I've had a wide variety of caregiving experiences, Diane.
You absolutely have. And it sounds like, it started here and it moved here and it just kept progressing. And I find, in my experience working with AARP, a lot of caregivers don't start out thinking of themselves as caregivers. So kind of what defines someone as a caregiver?
Yeah, I especially when I was in my 20s, I didn't think of myself as a caregiver. I work in the field of aging, so eventually I learned more of that terminology, but The thing about being a caregiver is that everyone's unique. It's kind of like across a spectrum. So on one hand, you may be doing just checking in on someone, making sure that they don't need anything, making sure they're okay. You might be providing transportation or taking them to doctor's appointments or grocery shopping for them. Might be doing yard work and housework. We gradually kind of increased that kind of support for my parents. You might be a long distance caregiver, all the way up to you might live nearby, or you might be a live-in caregiver. And then you might be caring for everyone's personal needs and everything from bathing, toileting, preparing meals, eventually sometimes feeding people. So it really is across the spectrum. So it's really important that we remember that wherever you are on that spectrum, you are a caregiver, because there's support for you out there as a caregiver.
Yeah, and it sounds like, if you take all that breadth of definition that you've got there, a lot of us, if not most of us, could be considered caregivers of one kind or another, and probably will be at some point in our lives if we haven't already. Do you know there's statistics about how many caregivers there are in the United States or in Missouri, and that the kind of the numbers on the game there?
Right. The numbers are always surprising to people. They're bigger than you think. Just in Missouri alone, there are 730,000 family caregivers. And across the nation, we look at about 48 million family caregivers who are caring for adults. Even more when you add people who are caring for children with special needs and that sort of thing. So it's pretty much, it touches every family in one way or another. They say if you've been a caregiver, you are a caregiver, or you will be a caregiver. And I always add, or you'll be a care recipient. Somebody's going to be helping you at least at some point in your life.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to back up to because a lot of times we say caregivers, but you're saying family caregivers, which is a big thing. But when you say family caregiver, that means somebody that you're caring for someone you're not a paid professional, right?
Right, exactly. That can be confusing too. We are talking about unpaid caregivers. And when we say family, that's also kind of a broad definition. It could be your relative, your parents, your grandparents, your aunt and uncle, your siblings, any kind of a relative, but it also can be friends and family. For example, I helped my next door neighbor, and then when she passed away, I helped her sister empty out her house. That was a caregiving task, even though I'm not family and I wasn't paid. So we have a lot of family caregivers out there, again, who may not think of themselves. You might be checking on your neighbor or mowing their grass for them and making sure they get their vaccinations, or a wide variety of tasks, and you are a caregiver.
Yeah, absolutely. I just think about, because I've been a caregiver as well, as you know,
Yes.
for my folks, and then for my uncle, and now for my, and for the guy across the street who was a World War II vet. So we all kind of do this, but I'm lucky in who I work for. But how do people in other jobs manage to be a caregiver and have a full-time job? It just seems like it would be such a challenge. And are there resources or any kind of help out there for them?
Yeah, that's so true. And 6 out of 10 family caregivers are working at either full-time or part-time job. So many of us are juggling an awful lot to keep it going, especially those of us who are caring for someone, very intensively. But, so many of us need to work. I ended up quitting my job so I could have more flexibility and be a consultant and have kind of make my own schedule more so I could care for my parents. But not everyone has that possibility. So you end up feeling very torn in multiple directions. I can remember so well feeling like I'm not doing anything really well. I feel like I'm just always, stretched so thin. And that can be so hard for caregivers who are really trying to do the best for everyone. People are dedicated to their jobs. What we need the most are flexible work options, the ability to, work from anywhere, which now with the pandemic, that's much more common. But also have different hours. If you're an hourly wage worker, what if you need to get your mom out of bed in the morning? Can you make sure you have an afternoon shift? Those kinds of things can be really tricky and difficult for people. You know, you worry about missing work, you worry about losing your job. Another thing, Diane, is, you know, as you say, you work that you do, and I've worked in the field of aging. I'm not afraid to talk about my caregiving experiences at work, but a lot of people are, because they're just not sure, you know, how that's going to be taken. They don't want people to think they're not dedicated to their work. So often you just feel so alone in it, you know, and you know, the hard part of it too is that you're working because you need the income, and the caregiving expenses are mounting up. So, as I know you experienced with your family and I with mine, to work in order to work full time, I had to pay people to help care for my loved ones.
Mhm.
And, you know, 8 out of 10 family caregivers incur out of pocket expenses. And guess what the average is? Over $7,000 a year out of their own pockets. And I know I can attest I spent a whole lot more than that. So that's just the average. So, you know, and Hispanic, Latino, and African American family caregivers report an even greater financial strain.
Well, and you know, a lot of people can't afford to take a $7,000 hit to the budget, and you're saying that's just the average. Is there a way to anticipate how much things are going to cost, or how to figure out your finances?
You know, there are some great tools. We have AARP has a long-term care cost calculator that's very helpful. And you know, the other thing that you need to look into is talk with a financial advisor, who is someone who does your taxes, a certified financial consultant, or counselor or planner, and make sure that you're maximizing both the income for your loved ones you're caring for and anything you can do. So, for example, there are sometimes tax credits. Well, AARP is endorsing a really important act called the Credit for Caring Act, and the bill would provide up to $5,000 tax credit for eligible working family caregivers. This particular bill, you have to be working, and it's designed to help people continue to work, because getting that tax credit, it's a credit of up to 30% of qualified expenses paid or incurred by the family caregiver above 2,000. So once you reach 2,000, then it would kick in. And the allowable costs are everything from home health care aids to paying for adult daycare, home modifications. I had to modify my bathroom for my dad, assistive technology, respite care, transportation, you name it. There's a lot of expenses that would be involved. So this Credit for Caring Act can be a really helpful tax credit for family caregivers. So I really urge you to talk to your members of Congress and tell them that it's really important, and ask them to pass that.
Yeah, well, and caregivers, honestly, you know, it's a labor of love for one thing, but they deserve every little help we can give them. And it's a contingent on us to speak up and advocate for the things that our caregivers need, because it's, you know, it's near to my heart, as I know it is to yours. And I know there are resources out there around the finances, and some of them are tied to special groups and organizations, or you have a special status, the person that you're caring for. One of the things that I think you and I've talked about before, maybe veterans, and there are special help for veterans that are out there. And I know you access some of that with your dad.
I absolutely did. My dad had never used any of his VA healthcare benefits when he was after, I think, the initial GI Bill, when they bought their first house after World War II. My dad was a veteran of World War II in Korea. And when I started caregiving for him, he needed hearing aids. I knew he had Alzheimer's. His care needs were going to increase. So I got him enrolled in VA healthcare. And that was extremely helpful. And also, he got aid and attendance benefits from the VA, which is cash benefit that help pay for the care. So many of his healthcare expenses were included, but that was, you know, towards the end of his life, and I wish we had done that a little bit sooner. But it is an arduous process, but I encourage you to continue on that. But you know what? Talking about the VA healthcare reminds me, the hard thing for me as a caregiver was I became an independent consultant, so I did not have benefits. So I had to pay for my own healthcare insurance. And, you know, there's a lot of family caregivers who do leave the workplace to do that. And I know in Missouri, you have passed a really important Medicaid Expansion Act that allows more than 20,000 people over the age of 50 qualify to maintain their health care coverage. And when you think about it, if someone leaves their job to care for a loved one, they're losing their health care coverage too. So that that Medicare expansion in Missouri can be a real big help to a lot of caregivers who have had to leave their workplace and lose their health insurance coverage.
Absolutely. And being able to navigate, the kinds of benefits and resources that are available for the person that you're caring for, as well as keep your benefits signed up for or making yourself eligible for the things that you're eligible for. It's several full-time jobs rolled up into one. Even if you're not still working, you're still having several jobs to work on. And there are all kinds of resources out there. One of the things that I'm going to mention is the state caregiving guide. We have an online guide, and this is online, and you can also get it through print if you contact the AARP Missouri State Office. Are there other resources like that are out there for people to help navigate different resources that you can talk about a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. We need to make sure that people realize that there is help out there. I always suggest that people contact their area agency on aging also, because they often have guides and information that can be very helpful. You can go to the elder care locator for that at eldercare.acl.gov. I think, the big thing about this, Diane, is that you have to build a team. Nobody can do this alone. And, I always say I can do anything, but I can't do everything. So part of that team is getting that guide from AARP Missouri. It's contacting the area agency on aging or contacting the VA and finding out what supports are available. There are caregiver support programs for you, the caregiver. So ask about that. You'll also want to talk to a qualified tax professional or financial counselor. As I said before, that's the one thing I wish I had done. And the financial aspects of caregiving were really hard on me because I was caring for multiple people at once, and it was for more than a decade. And I ended up actually having to go through bankruptcy because of it, because I paid for so much of the care needs, et cetera. And my one regret of my whole caregiving experience, because I don't regret anything I did for my family, my regret is that I didn't work with a financial counselor the whole time. And that maybe would have prevented me from making some decisions that made me end up in that overwhelmed state. So I urge people to do that. I urge you to check aarp.org/caregiving. We have so many tips and tools and articles. I write a column on the site, as well as several other experts, legal experts, a psychiatrist, and we have all kinds of incredible resources for you. There's one section in particular on financial and legal matters that pertains to some of the things we've talked about today. So I urge you to look for that on the AARP website. And then I moderate AARP's Facebook group. It's called the AARP Family Caregivers Discussion Group on Facebook. And Diane, I know you're a member of the group, and I think you'll attest, like I feel, that people get so much help from that group because they can post a question and get lots of people's experiences. And, I post a lot of resources for people. Someone posted recently, they're needed to do a Medicaid spend down for their mom going into the nursing home and trying to understand that and what expenses are allowed. And she got all kinds of great input from people. They're very practical matters, but it's also venting and saying, I don't think I can do this for one more day. And you know what? We all feel that way sometimes. And it's okay. And so you get that support through that group. And that's just at facebook.com/groups/AARP Family Caregivers.
Well, and I can't say enough good stuff about that Family Caregiver group on Facebook. Doesn't matter what your question is or what your experience is, people on that group are going to validate you. They're going to support you. They're going to give you good answers for things. They're definitely going to be there for you. And because it's Facebook, it's there whenever you're able to get on there. So I have loved being a part of that group and just enjoyed the sense of community that it brings. And I know that Amy has thrown out a lot of links and websites and things, and I've tried to put some of them on the screen for us, but they didn't all get up there. I will put them in the description underneath the video so that if you've missed any of those, you can go back and you can find them there without getting all frustrated trying to search for everything. So I will put them up for you. And it kind of looks like we're about to run out of time. So Amy, any closing thoughts about caregivers' finances?
I think the key thing, like I said, is just be really sure that you are getting support from an expert, a financial expert of some sort, that you're maximizing your loved one's income through public benefits or VA benefits. If they have long-term care insurance, make sure you learn about that and find out if they can start, receiving that. Really try to use the long-term care calculator and things like that can help you kind of understand. The hardest thing, Diane, is you don't know how long your situation is going to go on. And so it's very hard to plan long term. So I always say plan for a long time, because people live longer with chronic health conditions now. So plan for a long time, and make sure that as you're looking at the financial aspects of this, that you include something in your budget for taking care of yourself, whether that's once a year you get a vacation, or once a month you do something fun with a friend, or you have your coffee budget for every week that's what keeps you going on an ongoing basis, whatever that is, because we have to take care of ourselves. And Diane knows I talk about filling our tanks so that we have the energy to keep going to take care of others.
Absolutely. Amy, thank you so much for sharing your time and information about caregiving. We look forward to our next chat, where we're going to talk about resources for caregivers. In the meantime, please visit us at aarp.org/caregiving for more information and resources. And don't forget that AARP Missouri has the online Family Caregiver Resources Guide. And it's on your screen right now, aarp.org/Missouri/caregiver-resources. And we will see you next time. Thank you to our viewers for joining us to learn about caregiving. Please do share this video and information with others who may need it. If you'd like more information for caregivers, or to connect with other AARP information or fun, just go to aarp.org/near-you. And don't forget, AARP Missouri has a Facebook page that you can like, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We'll see you next time. Thank you for watching.